Thanks. I couldn't ask for a better introduction to what I'm going to tell you than the conversation that you've just listened to. I wrote a book last year called WTF, What's the Future and Why It's Up to Us. It's really about the role of human choice in our economy, but also what we can learn from the great technology platforms and the progress of AI about the economy itself. At the heart of the book is a narrative about the great technology platforms and what they teach us. And what they teach us is that the economy is a design thing. And so when we're talking about the future of work, the fundamental question is, why aren't we doing it? So the answer that I explore in there begins with the notion that AI is not something in a distant future. The question of whether we get to artificial general intelligence or not, in some sense, is irrelevant because we are all already living and working inside a machine. It's not just this guy inside the Google data center. We had that experience of Facebook in the last election, where the interactions between humans and machines coming out in unexpected ways. The manipulation of humans by people who were sophisticated enough to fool the algorithms that had the wrong idea about what showing people more of what they liked would do. They thought it would bring us closer together. It drove us apart. We are enmeshed in a vast machine that we are programming today, not tomorrow, not 15 years from now, not 100 years from now. We are programming it today. And what I want to explore is, what are we telling it to do, and what do we want to tell it to do? Because gradually, then suddenly, artificial intelligence and algorithmic systems are everywhere in new kinds of partnerships with humans. Right? So think about a site like Amazon. How many people here have never used Amazon? Okay, none of you. You're all living in this world. But think about the workers at Amazon. And you probably immediately think of the people in their warehouses, or maybe you think of the programmers. But actually, a huge amount of the work is already done by robots. And I'm not talking about the robots in the warehouses. I'm talking about the robots that take your orders. We're sitting here without even thinking about it. Amazon has 600 million products in the US alone, 3 billion products around the world. That store is curated for every individual visitor by robots that show you what they think you're going to want to buy, that show you what you're most likely to buy. And when you click on something and you decide what you're going to take, the robot takes your order and passes it along to the people and machines in the warehouse. So think about that. That is a machine. There are people who are creating the machine, there are people who are managing the machine, but there are also people like us who are enmeshed in the toils of that machine. So I'm not going to take the time to show you this video, but I highly recommend that if you just Google for Time Magazine, Amazon Warehouse video, you'll see the humans and the robots working together in an Amazon warehouse. It's really quite remarkable harmony of people and machines doing something together incredibly efficiently. I believe the statistic is they packed in half as many products, 50% more products, and they get them out 5 times as fast. Now, that's all in service of a consumer goal, but it shows what's possible when we start putting machines and people together in new ways. Now, I like to show people this picture of Victorian sweatshop workers and programmers at Pivotal, because after all, it looks like the more things change, the more they stay the same. But in fact, those developers are not piece workers cranking out software in the way that their forebears cranked out clothing, or people in countries around the world crank out clothing. They're the managers of these machines at Amazon, at Google, at Facebook. Right? And every day they inspect the performance of their workers and give them instruction in the form of new code. In software world, we call this the build, measure, learn cycle. You build something, you put it out there, you try to learn from it. And sometimes those learning cycles are short, and sometimes they are long. Facebook seemed to be going great until we realized through a series of unfortunate events that there were many untoward consequences of some of the instructions they had been giving their software robots. So now we see this coming to the real world. You suddenly realize that, there are now millions of people driving where their immediate manager is a robot. That's another way to think about a service like Uber or Lyft. There are people who are being told, go here, go there. Now, people have a lot of agency in this system. But there's an important thing to realize, that the people who design the system are actually figuring out the rules of the marketplace. There's a great quote from Alexis Madrigal in a recent piece in The Atlantic about the new Uber driver app, where he said that the Uber app is the driver's workplace as much as the city where they're driving. Each decision about its interface structures drivers' interactions with the company as well as with the transportation marketplace. So think about that. The software is the boss. Now we can say, yes, there are people who are designing it, but as we've seen, with Facebook and others, there are unseen consequences. So this core idea that I've been exploring is that the algorithms are effectively running the economy in many ways. And there's a wonderful book by Al Roth, who actually works in the next building over, Nobel Prize winning. He's actually not an economist, but he got his Nobel Prize in economics for the redesign of kidney marketplaces. And he wrote a wonderful book called Who Gets What and Why. And I think that's really the fundamental question of economics. And if we spent time thinking about how to get better at that, thinking about that the function of economics is not just to incent more production, more mindless buying, more growth, but instead to say, why are we doing what we're doing? How do we make this better? Because in the case of Al's work, he consistently looked at marketplaces that were not working as well as they should and said, well, we can redesign these. And this is what's so interesting about these technology platforms like Google and Facebook and Amazon and Uber and Lyft and Baidu and Tencent and Alibaba. They are exploring these frontiers of marketplace design and marketplace management by algorithm. And this is this frontier of AI, this frontier of this great machine that we are building, that we are increasingly living inside. Because as I mentioned earlier, there are immense consequences when platforms get their algorithms wrong. And we have to understand this. This is the immediate challenge of AI. And we can already see the fundamental flaw, I believe, that will create the robot apocalypse, so to speak. And that is the imperative of perpetual growth. This is a Facebook revenue chart. Right? User growth, right? We know that this is not going to go on forever, right? Because there are a limited number of people in the world, right? There's no way that Facebook can go beyond that horizon. We know that's going to flatten out. And yet our financial markets value Facebook based on you must keep growing. They value every company on the basis of you must keep growing. And what I discovered looking at the history of technology is that every technology I've been associated with over the last 40 years has begun in this burst of optimism, a burst of inclusiveness, a burst of opportunity. And the companies that came to dominate, eventually their growth slowed. And the master AI that said, you must keep growing, caused them to begin to consume their ecosystem. It happened with Microsoft, it happened with Google, it's happening with Facebook. And we have to understand that our economy is ruled by one of these machines as well. That's actually not a Google data center, although it looks just like one. That's the Equinix NY4 data center, one of the key Wall Street data centers. The machines of the future run our economy. They tell our companies what to do. They tell us, no, it really is better to increase your stock price than to pay your taxes. It really is better to increase your stock price than to train your workers. It really is better to increase your stock price than to take care of the environment. We have programmed the machine wrong, and that is why we are getting what we're getting in our economy. And I think we need to take this moment in which we are grappling with the question of AI and to ask ourselves to what extent our economy is already a rogue AI, right? Because we have been asking our economic algorithms to optimize for the wrong thing. Humans are being manipulated to click, to buy, to respond to the instructions of the machine. At the same time, they're treated as costs to be minimized or eliminated. This is unsustainable, right? So there is an alternative. And Oxford developmental economist Kate Raworth wrote a wonderful book last year called Donut Economics. And it's based on this idea that there's a kind of habitable zone for the economy. You can think of the green donut that she drew there is the habitable zone for our economy. It's where we're all happy. On the inside, there's economic undershoot. People don't have enough to eat. They don't have shelter. They don't have health care. They don't have access to opportunity. They don't have education. On the outside is economic overshoot, climate change. We're using too much of the world's resources, species loss. All these things that we look at and we say, oh, that's not good. And she says, look, the job of economics is to keep us in the donut. And I think that's a wonderful point. And that's where I start to get hopeful about AI. So there's two versions of economics going all the way back to Aristotle. And this is a wonderful paper written by Martin Reeves of the Boston Consulting Group, big consulting firm. And they used machine learning to look at something like 100,000 company documents. And they separated them based on the words they use, using a machine learning model, into the two buckets in which Aristotle divided the study of economics. And the first was oikonomia, the management of the household, which I would say is effectively donut economics. And the other is krematistikate, the pursuit of wealth. And what they found was that companies that used more words related to what you would call oikonomia, what you would call sustainable development, actually outperformed the companies that were simply about greed is good. So we have to actually rethink this. Anyway, so Kate's been trying to apply this to the ideas of the economy as well. And we just had a conversation last week, and she shared this slide with me, which I decided to put in my deck, where she really talked about there's this possibility of an emerging future that's distributive, that's regenerative, that's inclusive, right? And how do we get there? Because what we have is this current economy where business as usual ends up with a divisive, degenerative economy. We have all these disruptive innovations that seem to promise this up and to the right curve, and then they fall off, and we're back into the same world. And I actually have watched this same pattern, again, in my technology career. You know, there's this, in my book, I describe it in terms of a concept from evolutionary biology of fitness landscapes, where an organism becomes adapted to its environment, and a company becomes effectively king of the hill. And, you know, I've lived through 3 or 4 of these. I illustrate 3 up there: the personal computer, the big data and AI, and the smartphone. And in each case, again, there was this moment where the world was full of opportunity, the bottom of the hill, and the personal computer was the land of opportunity, and then the web was the land of opportunity, the smartphone was the land of opportunity. And each time the company got to the top. And the one time I think a company has been able to leap to the next barrier, it was through generosity. Google gave away Android, they gave away Chrome, they created value for others. And that comes to this idea that I think is central to how we build the regenerative economy. It's through generosity. And so the opportunity of AI is to figure out the economics of abundance that we can go to in the 21st century. Because we are no longer living in a world where there's not enough to go around. There is plenty to go around. It's just not going around. And so the question is, can we build that donut economics with the aid of AI? And there's a great quote from Bucky Fuller. He said, if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Just give them a tool which will lead to new ways of thinking. And I think we're starting to see that with AI. Paul Cohen, who's the dean of a School of Information at Pitt, says the opportunity for AI is to help humans model and manage complex interacting systems. And we're seeing that. Carla Gomez at Cornell has started something called the Institute for Computational Sustainability. She's using big data and AI to look at complex systems. She's working with a Brazilian power company. Which tributary of the Amazon should you dam? It's not based just on the narrow economics of the 20th century. It's saying, well, which will displace the fewest people? Which will hurt the fewest endangered species? They're working with the California Water Authority. How do you coordinate the release of water into the rice fields with migrating waterfowl? We now have the computational horsepower to take more factors into account. Wonderful, in this very room a couple of weeks ago, there was another conference where they talked about using big data and AI to help actually match up refugees with opportunity. Amazing work being done here at Stanford on that subject. So AI is actually this amazing tool that can take us from that old model where we've been teaching it to keep just trying to build this unsustainable world and instead say, no, actually, let's build a new, more sustainable world. So, when it comes to robots and jobs, I want to come back to Amazon. Because here's what happened. This is back from 2016. They're now up to 100,000 robots. But here's what happened when Amazon added 45,000 robots. They added 250,000 people. Why is that? Because they tried to do more. They got the products out faster. They now have next day, same day delivery. So Jeff Bezos calls this the flywheel. And it struck me that his flywheel diagram looks a lot like Kate Raworth's donut diagram. It's a circular economy. And the question is, can we build an economic flywheel that keeps us in the donut and use that to replace this unsustainable up and to the right? And I really believe that the master design pattern for applying technology is to do things that were previously impossible. And this was previously impossible. The economy that we have had has created enormous wealth, and it's been the best that we could do. But I think we're reaching a time when we can do better, and when we will do better. Because the great opportunity of the 21st century is to use our newfound cognitive tools to solve previously unsolved problems. We're going to have to deal with climate change. We have to rebuild the infrastructure. We need to feed the world. We need to end disease. Look at all the refugees who need resettling. We need to care for each other. We need to build an economy based on caring and educating and enjoying the fruits of shared prosperity. So I want to leave you with this idea that AI, and this is a wonderful new book coming out from Chinese venture capitalist Kai-Fu Lee, where he talks about the need for a new social contract that values and rewards socially beneficial activities. That is, the more we get the robots to do, the more we can actually focus on truly human activities. And we need to build an economy that rewards those activities. I'm totally with him, because I think we are, in fact, reaching the moment that John Maynard Keynes talked about in Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, when we could be free of pressing economic cares, and we could be focused on what does it mean to live wisely and agreeably and well. Technology can help us with that, because this is what technology wants. Nick Hanauer wrote, "Prosperity in human societies is best understood as the accumulation of solutions to human problems. We won't run out of work till we run out of problems." And I just want to ask you, do you really think we're done yet? I think there's plenty of work to go around, and I, for one, am eager to harness the power of our new cognitive machines to solve real problems, to make the entire world more prosperous, and to make the civilization of the 21st century be better than the one that we inherited. Thank you very much.